Hello everybody, I'm Tom Clark, your host here on Unfurled TV. This video here by ReasonTV is an older video that recently showed up in my recommends, and this video represents a Lino viewpoint that needs to be denounced. Lino meaning libertarian in name only. This is going to be a long response. I'm going to try to be civil about this, but honestly, I think it's going to turn into a rant-amentary. This would probably be better to listen as a podcast just because I don't want you guys to actually see me blowing a gasket. So I'm going to try to stick to the script and, keep the cuss words to a minimum. Anyway, let's take a look at this video from ReasonTV.
Some news outlets have claimed there's a troubling pipeline from libertarianism to the most revolting corners of the alt-right movement.
Okay, so ReasonTV, if you don't know, promotes its idea of libertarianism. I say its idea of libertarianism because I don't think they are actually libertarian. I think there's some real problems with ReasonTV. That being said, I like ReasonTV. Most of its content I like. Anyway, there's lots of different variations of libertarianism out there. You got the folks that want all drugs to be legalized. You got your open border folks, etc., and so on. I mean, there's people with single issue libertarianism going on out there. And I have no idea if ReasonTV promotes one particular flavor of libertarianism over another. I don't watch them all the time. But this here particular piece, this video here, does not represent my flavor whatsoever. And I think it's libertarianism in name only. I bring that up because what you're going to see here is ReasonTV making the case that it's unfair of some of the media to suggest that libertarian is the pipeline to the alt-right based upon a handful of examples. And I agree with that. I mean, but the hypocrisy here is strong. Because almost as soon as they start pegging that stake into the ground, they try to take people that are also not in the alt-right and paint them with the Alt-Lite brush. Well, I'm not buying it. What they're doing is they're taking people that are not part of the alt-right and muddying the waters, conflating the issues, conflating people's positions, conflating ideologies that should not be conflated. The alt-right has a very clear white ethno-state purpose about it, and it's very despicable to paint somebody with a racism brush that's not actually racist. So, all right, back to the script, Tom.
Jews will not replace us!
Their evidence is that white supremacist Christopher Cantwell, the star of a Vice documentary about the racist tiki torch-wielding Charlottesville mob, was once a figure in the Libertarian Free State Project. And the alt-right icon and white nationalist Richard Spencer himself was once a Ron Paul supporter and self-identified as a libertarian.
I don't know this Cantwell at all, and I've seen Richard Spencer's on YouTube only a couple of times. He put me off right away. He was saying some stuff that I believe is, unabashedly white supremacist in nature. That being said, I really don't enjoy watching this stuff, supremacist content, be it white, black, or brown, etc. And I just, I like to be informed, but I can't hardly stomach this crap. So I haven't dived into their lives. I really don't know what their positions are. I really don't know the nuances of it. So just that out of the way. In addition, I like to sometimes think that folks go through these racist phases. So even if a person was or is a racist, you know, I believe in redemption. So my hope is that they come to their senses at some point. So I like attacking the idea, the argument, a political position, rather than an individual. I'm afraid I'm going to probably have to break this rule a few times because this gentleman, what's his name? This Mr. Weismueller here, boy, he's donned on the mantle of libertarianism, and I don't think he's a libertarian. I don't, but you know, I don't know jack about him neither. So I you know, take that with a grain of salt. Where was I? All right. But for the sake of argument, let's just agree that these characters are alt-right, and that alt-right group wants a white ethno-state. My understanding is that the alt-right believes that the whites should have a homeland to call their own, so to speak. That's the general movement. I mean, of course, you're going to have out-and-out racists in there, but you're going to have more reasonable people too that are like, say, like the Jews have Israel, that's their homeland. The Muslims have several countries in the Middle East that are Muslim country. Why can't whites have a homeland of their own? Now, maybe that's racist, you know, because to me, racist is that you have a superior belief that you are a superior human being because of your genetics, of your race compared to another race. Wanting your people, your culture, your shared identity to have a homeland, that may be bad, but it's not as bad by any case of this belief that your people are superior to another people, and therefore you have superior rights over them and superior sway over them. So there's some nuance, I think, within the alt-right. I don't know. I don't follow it that much, but from what little I've seen kind of these two camps spring up. Again, I personally don't have a problem with like Nigeria being pretty much a black ethno state, as long as they treat their visitors and their minorities well. I really don't have a problem with that. Same with Mexico for Hispanics. I don't have a problem with that. It's their country, you know, and I could respect that. And I think if it's okay for them to be separate, the alt-right really does challenge me into thinking whether it would be okay for whites to have an ethno-state, like say Sweden, perhaps. If Sweden didn't have their immigration problem and they were a peaceful community and they liked it that way, you know, I don't think it would be fair. It's not right to denigrate like Sweden, if it was like that, or a country that is a white ethno-state, and just go after him and after him and after him as racist, and in that same conversation leaving out other race ethno-states. This breeds hatreds towards the white race that's totally undeserved, and it's been causing a major problem across the country for quite a while now, for several years. The alt-right has a point there. I don't necessarily agree with it, but if you're going to condemn one type of ethno-state, one race of an ethno-state, you need to condemn other races from being an ethno-state. Otherwise, you're a super hypocrite. And, you know, that's how I feel. Personally, I don't want a white ethno-state. I want a Western culture, United States of America, and I love it when minorities get on YouTube or get out in the public square and say, "I love America." You know, damn right, I love a melting pot too. That's what I'm for. But the alt-right's got a pretty good argument here. If you're going to condemn one type of ethno-state, you should condemn another one. Should you think your race is superior than another? Well, that seems really super dangerous to me, and I don't want any part of it. Anyway, getting back to Reason's video, what we have here is basically a couple of guys with ties to libertarianism, and they're now allegedly a part of the alt-right. They may very well be, I don't know. And so ReasonTV is correctly arguing that it does not therefore follow that libertarianism is the pipeline to the alt-right. I thought that's what they were arguing in the course of this video. That's what would make sense. I mean, there's nothing about a white ethno-socialist state that should be appealing to a libertarian. Libertarians should be all for the individual, regardless of race, color, and creed, and sex, and all of that. So why would the alt-right appeal to a libertarian? It's an easy argument to make that it's complete bullshit. Basically, what these other media outlets he's complaining of have done is they've taken racism and attached that to the alt-right, which it probably deserves. In large measure, it probably deserves at least one camp in the alt-right movement. And they've used that brush to paint libertarians as, a gateway drug for racists. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? That's not fair. And what you do when you take people like Richard Spencer, again, assuming that he's an alt-right racist, and putting that guy into the same a rubric, into the same camp as people like Lauren Southern or Ann Coulter or something, it's ridiculous. It's the same tactic.
Anyone who claims to care about individual liberty should reject the overt racism in Charlottesville.
Well, I certainly reject overt racism and violence, but I don't think you tie that to someone that believes in the individual liberty. I don't think no one likes. I shouldn't say no one likes, but I don't like deep-seated violent racism. I don't think anybody in the quote-unquote alt-light that you painted with the alt-right brush believes in violent racism. But on the other hand, from a libertarian perspective, so long as a racist doesn't pick someone's pocket or break someone's leg, he has the right, according to the First Amendment, to hold that belief and associate with others that have that same belief. So to me, this is Mr. Weismueller engaging in virtue signaling rather than presenting a solid libertarian perspective. Yes, racism, it's disgusting, but traditional libertarianism, folks, correct me if I'm wrong, would defend the racist's right to hold that disgusting belief. Now, a libertarian can condemn that viewpoint. It can try to convince a person not to be a racist, like Mr. Weismueller is doing here. But, it's certainly not a tenet of libertarian philosophy that, you go after people that hold these beliefs. I mean, it might be a side effect or something like that libertarians certainly believe that you look at the individual and they have rights irrespective of color. So that's definitely true libertarianism. The thing that's bugged me here about it is Mr. Weismueller should be defending the alt-right's right to free speech, and he doesn't even address it. So, I disagree with the alt-right, but I defend their right to free speech. I mean, that's That should have been said. If you're a libertarian, that should have been said, especially with today's deplatforming and censorship going on.
The broadly defined alt-right and the watered-down alt-Lite variants represented by provocateurs like...
Oh, there, champ. Broadly defined alt-right and alt-Lite? Really? Is that where we're going? We're not going to have any nuance here, and we're going to toss as many people as we can into the Nazi bucket. Seriously? Look, you don't look reasonable when you illegitimately throw someone else under the bus because someone was trying to throw you under the bus. That's bogus, man. Don't do that kind of stuff. Or if you're going to do that stuff, don't call yourself a libertarian, because that's ridiculous. I mean, a libertarian should be ashamed of themselves for arguing like that. That's so beneath the intellectual capacity of your average libertarian. It's oh my gosh. Calm down, Tom. All right. You should be, Mr. Weismueller, you should be narrowly defining and very careful about who you claim is a racist. Don't you agree? And especially in the case of, associating a violent racist with somebody that is a defender of Western culture, because that's the line that all libertarian stripes would agree to, that should not be crossed. I mean, come on. You don't take individuals, analyze what they're saying, and then throw them into a group that they don't belong to. That's not a libertarian way of dealing with things. Whatever happened to looking at the individual? You're not doing that. You're taking individuals and you're throwing them into a bucket that they don't belong into without really knowing about their positions. That's ridiculous. I mean, if you want to make this argument without attaching names to it, fine. I mean, that's fine. But oh my gosh, to feed the fire that these folks that you disagree with are racist, I mean, you could get these individuals hurt for no reason than your damn virtue signaling, sir.
Milo Yiannopoulos and YouTube personalities Stefan Molyneux and Laura Southern, as well as the right-wing nationalism pushed by recently fired White House strategist Steve Bannon.
Now you've gone completely off the rails. I watched the video before, so I know you went here, but jeez, you don't want to have a broadly defined, I might even say a non-defined definition of the alt-right, because that leads to what you've done here. You've just heaped in three people that I'm pretty sure are not racist into the Nazi bucket. I mean, I don't know about Bannon, but Milo Yiannopoulos, Stefan Molyneux, and Lauren Southern, I've watched those folks a bit, and from what I've seen, they're basically defending Western culture and advocating that it's not okay to be racist against whites, simply, and even if they are the majority. So, I hope you have some clear and convincing evidence that ties them to the worst sort of racism seen at Charlottesville, and that you have evoked here and foisted upon them by your inferences and claims. Let's see that backed up.
These expressions of right-wing populism are the antithesis of libertarianism, and they collapse under their own logic.
Okay, so what I'm hearing from you now is that right-wing populism is somehow deserving of also being lumped into the alt-right. This is so terribly unfair. I mean, the distinction between the two is so important that it is unfair to lump them together. It'd be like lumping socialism and populism and nationalism and republicanism, all into one group called statism, and then taking the very worst people in those groups like Hitler and painting the whole group, all those different ideologies, as Hitler. This is what you're doing. It's just sad.
I think it's more accurate to say that the alt-right cares about Western supremacy rather than white supremacy.
Okay. All right. Is this your best case against Mr. Yiannopoulos? Folks, tell me if I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure I've seen Milo say on several occasions that the alt-right hates him. This looked like, I don't know, I don't want to back it up, but it looked like an early in his career interview. But, the alt-right hates the guy, all right? He prefers relationships with black men. So, I got to tend to believe him on that point. And I haven't seen him say anything that suggested that he's a bona fide racist. Yeah, he's a provocateur, and he would, say some racially charged things, but that doesn't make one a racist. It just doesn't. And your evidence, what you presented here, all Milo said here, in this one instance, in regards to the alt-right, that it is more fair to say that the alt-right believes in Western culture superiority over white race superiority. And quite frankly, I think that's a good point because, I'm not a member of the alt-right. I don't want anything to do with any flavor of the alt-right, of the white ethno-state. But there is a camp in there, from what I see, that, really hold up this defending Western culture idea. And this is how it has to be done, unfortunately. I don't subscribe to that, but it's kind of a fair statement about at least a portion of the alt-right. So, whether Milo is exactly right or exactly wrong, at least it's taking political movements, taking some of their less controversial arguments seriously. And that's a good thing, in my opinion. Sure, you want to look at the whole movement, but you don't want to ignore, and demonize everybody within that movement that don't hold the most extreme values in that movement. And I think Milo's done a good job in that interview, or in that little segment, kind of making that case as best he could in that amount of time. I would make the case that, I haven't seen it. You haven't presented it. I don't know if it exists, but it would be nice to know, to have some polling or some, sociological studies that kind of helps us figure out what's going on with self-identified alt-right people, so that we could get beyond just mere speculation about it. It would be nice, but we don't have it. And so, for all I know, Milo could be correct. I mean, there could be like 8 alt-right guys that are just horrible, violent racists, or I don't know, 100 of them that showed up at Charlottesville, or whatever that number is, and there could be tens of thousands that hold a different belief. For all I know, Milo's right. So as far as I'm concerned, you have absolutely nothing here that ties Mr. Yiannopoulos to the alt-right, let alone racism, let alone violent racism. Seeing a libertarian make such an unsupported argument in a produced video like this with funding behind you is downright disappointing. Sir, make your case when you're trying to paint somebody with that racist brush, please. I don't even like, sorry, Mr. Yiannopoulos, I don't even really like your most of your advocacy work and content. I don't like it. I don't like that thing. I think the country needed it. I really do. I think the country needed it. The country and Western civilization kind of owes a debt to you, but that doesn't mean I like the content itself. It's like war. I don't like war. sometimes you have to fight a war. It's kind of like that. Anyway, back to the script.
Western civilization is our birthright. It makes all good things possible. Undefended, it collapses.
And Mr. Weismueller, and there is no racism at all evident here. In fact, I think you go on to defend that libertarians are the true defenders of Western culture, or the Enlightenment principles, or some baloney like that. What do you think Tucker means by Western civilization? You think he means white? By that standard, you mean white when you say Enlightenment era. It's ridiculous. Calm down. Calm down, Tom. The only thing that could be even remotely non-libertarianism here is we must fight to preserve it. What the shit, excuse me, what the shit did you think the Founding Fathers did? You don't think they fought? I don't know what's wrong with you peaceniks. Freedom had to be fought for. It will have to be fought for again. Because humans are fallible. Because power abhors a vacuum. What is wrong with you peacenik people? You just drive me crazy. Libertarians should not want war. But if it comes down to their freedom, they should be willing to fight for it. Otherwise, just give up. Just let whatever the strong man that rolls into America with the biggest 4x4 and the biggest shotgun, he takes over the country. What's wrong with you guys? I mean, anyway, I got to get back to the script. This is basically somebody saying that American culture, the melting pot culture, all that stuff that we think of as traditional Westernism, that's great, and we need to be involved in preserving it. How is that even remotely racist when the American culture is the quintessential, worldwide considered to be the melting pot culture? Your argument is absolutely bizarre that you would take this example of all that Tucker Carlson has done. You will take this innocuous, this bread and butter American attitude and act like it's some kind of dog whistle for Nazis to go out and slaughter minorities. Calm down, Tom. We're having a civil debate.
The fundamental question of our time is whether the West has the will to survive. So, this is your evidence? What is the context of this statement? I'm not even sure what the president is talking about. He got this little snippet out of here. We don't even know what the context is. Is it erecting a border, or is it, the mass immigration into Europe? I don't know what it's talking about, so that I can have proper context to see whether or not I agree with the president on this issue. My goodness, this is such flimsy evidence of racism. You're absolutely bonkers, Mr. Weismueller. Give us something substantial when you're trying to paint somebody with a racism brush, okay? Don't give us conspiracy theory evidence and your conspiracy theory score in the back room. Give us meat and evidence if you have it. Please.
The alt-right claims to be the savior of Western civilization, which apparently is on the brink of collapse because Muslims and Mexicans are invading our society.
They come to countries, they rape women. They're having a very difficult time learning not to rape women.
Look, this is a Western culture issue. It's not necessarily about race. It's more about ideology. Okay? Right? I don't think this
She didn't say brown people rape. Who is Ann Coulter talking about? Is it Islam or is it MS-13? MS-13 is not a race. MS-13 is a bunch of thug animal gang members. That's what they are. A bunch of, I don't know, I've even heard them report as Satanists. All right? You're fighting Miss Coulter. She's bombastic, yes, but she's fighting against people that are violent extremists. And if you want to say she's calling out brown people, you're part of the problem, because you have to defend our ideas that are good against bad ideas. And it's a bad idea to have people come into our communities that we just can't get along with and are violating our people's rights based upon ideology, not the color of their skin, based upon what's in their thinking processes. Holy cow. And to back that up, let's think about, you now have Islamist go zones reported in Australia, England, Germany, Sweden, and France. I've seen it reported that this has also happened in Michigan, and in Texas, I recall a report where there was an attempt to get Sharia law recognized by the city council. Okay, so this is a problem. You haven't even given us Miss Coulter's claim. For my goodness, this is just, this is so terrible. Back to the script. With respect to illegal Hispanics, the number is somewhere between 15 million to 30 million of illegal Hispanics in the country. I don't personally know that to be true or false, but I think that's generally accepted. It's somewhere in there, but if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. Somebody please correct me. But I've personally seen communities where I've been warned by people that I trust, trusted individuals, people that I know not to be racist, warn me about going into those Latin Americanized neighborhoods. Gringos aren't welcome there, basically. That is a problem. Don't go in there, or I have to be careful to go in there. And that's a problem. And I think it's right for the country to address. And until that sort of problem's really sorted out, I think a halt on immigration is warranted. But the point is here, you're not showing me anyone that is arguing for a pure white ethno-state. I mean, maybe Richard Spencer, but you didn't even show him arguing for that. They may want one, but sir, you're not proving that at all. You're just showing me folks that have been arguing for limiting immigration to one degree or another and pointing to problems that occur wide scale with our current level of immigration and the level of immigration seen in Europe. So I'm just absolutely flabbergasted. I'm not sure what your point is, other than you want open borders. And if somebody doesn't want open borders, therefore they're a racist? That's so weak. So weak.
Once you replace one population with another, it will not be the same. Not even close.
Yeah, I don't see how you can argue with that. If you took every one out of America and you moved in only Japanese, the culture would be completely different. You don't agree with that? The culture would be the same. That's a smackdown win for Miss Southern. I don't even know what you're saying. Take the reverse of it. If we took everybody in Japan and moved them off of the island of Japan and we stuffed American people in there with their McDonald's and their meat-loving ways and their love for dairy products, you don't think the culture of Japan would change? You are mad.
You know, when you bring the third world to the first world, you don't get the first world. You get the third world.
I don't understand how you could think that that is even controversial. I mean, it's controversial in an emotional way, but in a rational, evidence-based way, deductive reasoning sort of way, it's not. It can't. You'd have to be insane to think that that's a controversial statement. Look at Venezuela, for example. Socialism replaced the free market, and you're left with a totalitarian dictatorship and starving people. In our representative democracy, if you replace people that believe in the free market and free speech with those that don't, you'll end up where Venezuela ended up. A third world country. In that case, you didn't replace the population per se, but the free market ideology was supplanted, and mass unrestricted immigration will get you to the same exact place. It's a simple little thought experiment. Again, if you took everybody out of America and you imported everybody in from third world countries, you'd end up with total chaos. Stefan Molyneux is just saying, look, as far as I can tell from that little clip you showed, it looks like to me he's arguing that, like, too much immigration will get you to this place you don't want to be. And he's right. He's not arguing that it has to be a total replacement with the immigration, but there's some unknown line with immigration, third world immigration, that will bring your country down. And that's especially true in a country that has a welfare state. And libertarians are against the welfare state. I know that in the best worlds we wouldn't have a welfare state. That would significantly reduce our immigration issues that we're having now. If you want to make that case, I'm on board with that case. That's a good case to make. But the case that we don't have an immigration problem at all, that's not a good case. That flies in the face of looking out your window in some communities, okay? So there is a problem, and people are talking about the problem, they're seeing the problem, and they want something done about the problem. And because you're a lino, a libertarian in name only, you're not willing to come up with a real help for your fellow citizens that you hold tenancy in common here in the United States. You're siding with outsiders for some unknown reason. I can only assume that you're a globalist. And let me tell you how libertarianism fares in globalism. It doesn't.
Members of the alt-right point to the sizable influx of immigrants to Europe in the wake of destabilizing Middle Eastern wars. But America isn't Europe.
I have to laugh because you say that, and the only reason you offer that the U.S. isn't in danger of cultural replacement is because the U.S. isn't as stupid as Europe yet. People are arguing against the stupidity of Europe, and that if we're not careful, we'll suffer the same fate. And you're saying, don't worry about it. We're not going to suffer the same fate as long as we do the same stupid things they did. Anyway, take Sweden, for example. I don't know what an accurate number is, but I think it was that there is about 10 million residents, and 2 million of those are of foreign background. At least that's the number I got from worldpopulationreview.com countries/Sweden-population. Now, I've seen credible reports that there are no-go zones in Sweden. Those reports look credible to me. We have those in the United States in areas, where it's dangerous for Whitey to go. We know that in those enclaves, crime is getting out of control. Well, it's at least credibly reported that crime is getting out of control. And the proof that I want to bear is that, and this will come out in the next Sweden's next election. Right now, the right-wing party is set to win the coming elections in September. Now, this is a right-wing party that historically has had no or just bare minimum representation to winning government seats in their parliamentary system. They've had no representation at all. Now they're going to be the dominating party in just a handful of years, and that doesn't cause you to think about the implications of immigration, to make you realize, look, man, right or wrong, there is a culture clash going on here, a serious culture clash that needs to be thought through soberly, rather than this hit piece you're doing. Man, you have blinders on, sir. I'm going to go ahead and skip some of this. Please go watch their entire video without my interruptions, folks. It's always good to go back to the source materials and see if the person commenting against those materials is being fair. Anyway, I don't know why, but I didn't want to go over that section.
But let's get back to those Western values. America's founders based their ideas on Enlightenment values such as individual property rights and free trade, as articulated by philosophers like John Locke and Adam Smith.
So far, so good. I'll note right here that Adam Smith and John Locke were philosophers. They neither fought in the Revolution, they did not sign the Declaration of Independence, they did not vote on the Constitution for the United States of America. They were philosophers. But so far, so good.
And who did they build their ideas in opposition to? Mercantilists, protectionists, or what we today would call economic nationalists?
No. That is a ridiculous reduction of the issues that the founders faced and that we faced. It's true that many founders knew that free trade between citizens of nations was, the utopian way, the ultimate way to conduct economic affairs. But in the real world, where there's nation states that control market forces that are not based upon free trade between individual citizens, it's a recipe for disaster for one nation, one of those nations, to not bargain collectively. The world market is not a free market. It's not. If it was, that would be great, but it's not. You have to deal with reality. If all the other nations in the world adopted an absolute free market, then we would, I'd be with you 100%. But that's not the reality we live in, sir. The founders lived in reality. I live in reality. You apparently don't live in reality. Okay. I got you. You're here. You're up with the philosophers. You're up there with, Adam Smith and John Locke at the very end of the theory of what life could be. But, sometimes you have to deal with reality. Okay. People that deal in reality are much better suited to govern. The founders were practical men, and you'll have to demonstrate to me that they would have agreed to all these modern lopsided trade deals or not imposed tariffs against other nations today. when in fact they imposed tariffs as soon as the government was formed. If you just go to Wikipedia and look up tariffs in the United States history, you'll see tariffs were the year that the Constitution was ratified, they imposed tariffs. Oh man, come on now, you can do better than this. What you're saying flies in the face of history, of well-documented facts. The difference between some philosopher talking about free market principles and what the founders actually enacted are two separate things, okay? Unless the history books are lying to us, you don't have a leg to stand on.
Post-Charlottesville, Trump's recently fired chief strategist Steve Bannon told a reporter that white ethno-nationalists are losers and clowns. And then he made a case for economic nationalism.
Listen to you. Do you hear your own words? Steve Bannon is telling you that white ethno-nationalism is stupid, but economic nationalism is not the same thing. He's right. And here you are conflating two issues and the two camps, the alt-right ethnoists versus economic nationalists, like a demagogue. Sir, you should be ashamed. I don't know who you are or your history, but I don't think you make a good libertarian at all. You're acting foolish, you're not addressing the questions you yourself raise, and yet disparaging folks that have views that are more closely aligned with what the founders actually enacted for the real world versus what is shown to be possible in theoretical treatises. The founders, yes, they considered Locke and Smith, but they didn't buy that stuff lock, stock, and barrel. That's evidenced in the Constitution itself. Read it one day. They implemented those types of theories as far as they felt they could within the context of the real world. Give me a break.
Economic nationalism. We're a nation with an economy, not an economy just in some global marketplace with open borders.
We talk about free trade. It's not free trade, it's stupid trade. China dumps everything that they have over here. No tax, no nothing, no problems, no curfews, no anything. We can't get into China.
President Trump is right that free trade isn't always a two-way street. But as Nobel Prize-winning economist Milton Friedman explained,
any individual country by itself, on the average, tends to benefit from free trade regardless of what the other countries do.
Don't believe him? Well, recent polling finds the majority of economists agree that free trade is a net benefit. And empirical studies show a correlation between fewer trade barriers and a higher per capita GDP. One study compared countries that opened up trade and cut tariffs to ones that didn't, finding that citizens in the freer trade countries saw their incomes increase by an average of 20% more than in closed economies.
Okay, I think that that's true. I generally agree with the premise that societies tend to benefit regardless of what other countries do if they adopt a free market model against somebody that doesn't. And it's not an absolute rule, and it doesn't mean that your economy is doing as good as it could otherwise. All right? And I don't think that you understand the president. He wants to use the threat of tariffs as leverage to reduce tariffs against American exports, to open up markets for American exports. He doesn't really want to impose these tariffs. He's using them as leverage. That's what I call standing up for free trade. Kowtowing and not standing up against foreign powers to the detriment of free and open trade. That's not a free trade president. That's, cronyism, maybe not in the terms of corporatist cronyism, but certainly globalist cronyism. So I support the president and the United States using its tariff powers as leverage to reduce tariffs and open up markets across the globe. I support that. I support it to the point that if the other side won't be reasonable to actually go into a trade war with these folks. Now, do I want a trade war? No, but I think that you do have to fight for not a violent war, but you do have to struggle for a fair trade. Otherwise, you lose fair trade. You know, it's not that complicated if you just take off the ideological blinders for a minute and realize, hey, we're dealing with some bad actors on the other side. We're gonna have to get down in the dirt a little bit. Right? It's not hard.
Through international trade, middle-income consumers have seen their purchasing power grow by as much as 30%, and low-income consumers benefit roughly twice as much. Trump's fans can cheer when he pressures companies to locate their manufacturing plants in America, but these success stories unravel with closer scrutiny.
Just like...
Okay. First of all, that's probably the worst cost-benefit analysis I have ever seen. Look, if you were a business, you don't just look at your expense ledger and say, wow, our costs are down. We're profitable. That's silly. You have to look at your income ledger, for crying out loud. You know, your accounts receivable. But it's only half of the analysis, and it's not even that good of a half of analysis. Especially when it's been reported for a long time now that wages have been stagnant for years, heck, I think decades. So to make this whole case based upon a really shallow analysis of half of the accounting ledger, I can't believe what you're saying. You're absolutely untrustworthy at this point. Now, I'm open to the prospect that you may be right. I'm open to that, like, look, let's look at the whole thing. Maybe we can get down to the specifics. You know, so I'm with you there, but you haven't done that. So definitely, if the president's doing bad things in the name of the American people, I want to identify those, to unravel what's going on that's bad. And I'm eagerly awaiting from you, sir, some hard-hitting facts or a really good study that proves your case. I mean, you don't have to include you don't have to read the whole study in your presentation. You can cite that study like you did earlier that really makes this case and emphasize that study. So I'm convinced that that's a good study and it's worth my time to go look at. Why didn't you make that case? Why? All right. But I'm going to guess that you're not going to back up your claims. Instead, you'll move right along to your next talking point, just like the regressive globalists. That's what I'm guessing.
Just like the progressive left, the alt-right wants to empower the federal government, just as long as the right people are in power, doling out benefits to their favorite constituencies.
Dude, the U.S. Constitution grants the federal government the power to lay tariffs. It doesn't matter which party is in power. This power has existed for over 2 centuries with the federal government. Okay? This is not the alt-right empowering the government with a power that the government doesn't have. The government already has this power, and it's been using this power without interruption, to my knowledge, for 229 years. Go look at the import-export clause in Wikipedia. You know, I'm trying to be nice, but this is utter buffoonery escaping your mouth, okay? You have staff. You have resources. Jesus Christ, how can you present this nonsense? Oh, calm down, Tom. Calm down.
This is why you'll hear alt-right leaders speaking favorably of single-payer healthcare.
When we enter this new stage where we're talking about national programs, where we're talking about we have a basic income program, we have a healthcare program, it's almost inherently racial. It will inherently, you could say, nationalize the discourse or racialize the discourse.
I agree with you 100% that government-controlled healthcare is a stupid idea, assuming that you're making that point. And I can almost guarantee you that Stefan Molyneux does not support government control of almost any industry that you can point to, including healthcare. If you want to, you can go to his YouTube channel. The video that covers this, I think, fairly well in regards to healthcare is listed right here. Lowercase m for uppercase Y, 8, lowercase v, uppercase G, lowercase u, uppercase b, lowercase k, r, k. I forget the title of it, but he has a guest doctor on talking about free market healthcare alternatives. As to Lauren Southern, she's also extremely positive towards libertarian principles. She once ran as a libertarian candidate. If they side with Richard Spencer on this, nationalizing, socializing industries within the United States, then, man, could you just show those to me? Because I'd love to see them if they exist, because I would love to take issue with them. You know, I looked on their channels and did some Google, and I couldn't find it. So, you know, unless you can show me that all of these people, like Ann Coulter, Tucker Carlson, they don't want nationalized health care. You're putting everybody in the same bucket again that doesn't need to be there. So what I suggest is don't use examples of people that don't fit within your claims. All right. Now, specifically here, to be fair, you didn't throw out Stefan Molyneux and Lauren Southern for this specific example of national health care. But the thing is, when you're lumping people that that have different ideologies into one ideology and then are not clear about where they stand on other issues, it's not fair. Okay? Don't do that. It's not right. Anyway, I'm just going to have to remain unconvinced that this is some position of the Alt-Lite as you've tried to lump them all together. But if you take this whole piece, I mean, in context, this video from ReasonTV is a frickin' fake news hit piece, okay? I think I'm making that case very well, and it's actually fairly deplorable, all right? Coming from an organization that should know better.
Before he was ejected from the White House, Steve Bannon attempted to talk Trump into boosting income taxes to fund his nationalist agenda. Some right-wing populists have even advocated using the power of the state to force private tech companies to be run like quasi-governmental public utilities.
Since it has the power to censor the internet, Google should be regulated like the public utility it is, to make sure it doesn't further distort the free flow of information.
Okay. I agree with you if this is your point. More taxes and more government, generally a bad thing. But now you're going completely off the rails by tossing right-wing populists in with the alt-right because somebody has suggested that something needs to be done about deplatforming and censorship on the internet. That's just not fair, okay? I think you're probably right. I think it's a bad idea. I don't really agree with Tucker Carlson, at least at this point in time. At this point, I certainly do not agree with regulating all social media platforms as a public utility. I think that's probably the worst possible solution out there to handle this. But I'm going to continue to have an open mind about it because it's so critical that people be able to communicate with each other. I think the world is going to be a better place if we keep these lines of communication open. And anybody that's standing in the way of that, I have to keep an open mind about doing something about people that are trying to stop that. I think there's probably a digital Bill of Rights solution to this problem, and that would be preferable in my view. Where citizens, you wouldn't have a regulatory board handling this, but you'd have citizens have a private right of action to sue, like social media companies that stand in your way to engage in the public discourse, who violate basically your personal free speech rights. All right. Now, I don't necessarily think that's the best way to handle that at this time, but at least there you wouldn't need to hire a bunch of bureaucrats. The citizens could police these multimedia companies themselves. I should say social media companies. I would prefer that this Bill of Rights, if a digital Bill of Rights, if it came to pass, that it would be very, very narrowly tailored. But again, I'm a libertarian, so I don't think we've gotten to that point yet where we can give up on having an actual free market solution. I think that corporate censorship of the citizenry is going to eventually drive people to an actual free speech, free market solution. I generally agree with you, but lumping Tucker Carlson in with the alt-right is not a good look. It's not a good look. It makes you look unhinged and radical.
The alt-right may be in for the same sort of harsh lesson as the left about what happens when you opportunistically increase the power of a government you're certain to lose hold of one day.
Okay, this is just bizarro land. The alt-right is not in power and is not going to be in power. Nationalist populists now have a place at the table, but nationalist populists are not the alt-right. I'm not an expert at this stuff, but I seem to know more about libertarianism, populism, and ethno-nationalists and political figures and commentators than does ReasonTV. You guys need to do better.
So why does a philosophy so at odds with its core values attract any defectors from the libertarian movement?
Maybe someone else can decode what you're saying here. What philosophy is at odds with its own core values? I must be an idiot because I can't figure out what you're talking about. As far as I can tell, I think you've just constructed something that cannot exist there. Folks, please, if somebody can figure out what in the hell he said right there, put it down in the comments. I can't figure it out. I've listened to it 5 times. I don't know. I can't figure out what he's talking about anyway. It may be because I'm so upset. Anyway.
Well, what's most appealing are the alt-right's opposition to foreign wars, its nominal defense of free speech, and a valid-sounding critique of PC excess.
Well, at least now you're getting back to your main issue, which is why or why not libertarian is a pipeline to the alt-right. I'm not even sure what case you're making, but we'll see. Maybe we'll get there. So, opposition to foreign wars. Look, you would not leave the Libertarian Party if that was your hot button issue, because the Libertarians, Libertarians detest foreign entanglements. So that can't be the reason that Libertarians are moving over to the alt-right. There's a more powerful magnet for that within the Libertarian Party. There's no reason for him to go somewhere else. There has to be some other reason. Same goes for free speech. Same goes for the opposition to PC culture. Those all fit smack dab square within the Libertarian core. So I think you've confused yourself with your own arguments. If you haven't confused yourself, you certainly confuse me. I don't know why you're arguing core Libertarian arguments are alt-right arguments. I don't know why you're arguing that.
After all, Milo Yiannopoulos made a name for himself as a provocateur on campus.
Feminism is cancer. Thank you very much.
The truth is that the alt-right's commitment to free speech runs about an inch deep.
Okay. You see how quick you went from Mr. Yiannopoulos is a alt-light to now he is alt-right. You should be careful with other people's reputations, sir. This is ignorant on two fronts, because Milo, you proved to me that he's alt-right. Otherwise, he said he's not. People on the alt-right have said he's not. I've never seen him argue for a white ethno-state. Defending Western culture is something that libertarians do, and it's something that Milo does as a provocateur. This is so laughable what you're doing here, because criticizing an ideology is not anti-free speech. All right? Criticizing ethno-state ideas like you're doing are not anti-free speech. Criticizing populism is not anti-free speech. Criticizing nationalism, which I am for, is not anti-free speech. Criticizing libertarianism, which I am for, is not anti-free speech. And criticizing feminism is certainly not anti-free speech. What in the hell are you talking about? Do you understand anything, I mean anything at all, about liberty?
Many have engaged in similar behaviors as the politically correct progressives they decry, forming online mobs and boycotts to encourage private entities to fire commentators like Kathy Griffin and Reza Aslan for political speech deemed offensive. And they've shut down modernized stagings of Shakespeare's Julius Caesar for the offense of depicting the assassination of a Trump-like lead character.
Okay, citation please. The alt-right shut that down? I don't think you know what cause and effect is. All right? The alt-light shut that down? I don't think you know what cause and effect is. I don't think you know what correlation is. I don't believe you. I think if anyone shut this down, it was the leftists that put it on. The leftists caved to a general public outrage. I don't think that this had a lot to do with ideology. They just looked at it, and it was just a morally disgusting for them. And they looked at that and they said, "Look, this could be dangerous. I mean, he's our sitting president, and we've had presidents assassinated, and this is just not. I mean." I don't want to get into the ideological weeds about this. This is just, man, with the political violence being on the rise, and congressmen getting shot up when they're practicing baseball, man, this is not good. This is just a bad idea to sow divisiveness in this way or at this time. It's a bad idea. And who shut the operation down? No, it wasn't the right. It wasn't the alt-right. There wasn't neo-Nazis showing up there with torches and chains and I don't know, Kalashnikovs. Well, whatever. Probably a Kalashnikov would be better for an anti-fascist, but they weren't showing up with AR-15s and shutting this thing down by force. The left realized we got a general public outrage here, crosses ideological lines, and we're not going to win any favors here. We better shut this down. And I agree with them. They should have shut it down because, I think I would have felt the same if they were doing this against presidents that I have absolutely zero respect for. And that, the latest one would be President Obama. I don't think, especially when he is in office at the time, doing this sort of a play would be a good idea, or cutting his head off. I mean, it's not really an ideological thing. It's just a decent human respect for each other type of thing. And we can cross ideological lines and say, hey, man, that's going too far. Did the left have the right to do it? As a libertarian, yes. Was it a good idea that they shut it down? Hell yes.
A sitting president's threats to sue publications that criticize him and his willingness to shut out journalists whose coverage he doesn't like.
Man, at this point, I think you have Trump derangement syndrome. I honestly do. Look, I didn't vote for the guy, but in the absence of a Ted Cruz or a Rand Paul, President Trump is doing okay. The press can print any damn thing they want, all right? But since George Washington today, there has never been a requirement that the President of the United States has to entertain a single journalist request for answers or an interview. There's never been a president in my memory that hasn't complained about the press. The founders complained about the press. Okay? And threatening to sue. Look, I agree with the president that the defamation laws need to be tightened up for public figures. You can be sued for lying about somebody, and that's mainly, at this point, a statutory law question, and you can change those laws fairly easily, as opposed to changing the Constitution itself. You wouldn't need to amend the Constitution to fix our defamation laws. Before I could support presidents redefining defamation laws, I would want to see the precise proposal, because there are some dangers there. But I do think, and I do agree, that something needs to be done. I think the protection afforded by our defamation laws that apply to the average citizen needs to be applied to the public citizen. Come on. That's not a radical idea, and I don't see how that infringes upon American libertarianism at all. Now, anarchists won't like it, because anarchists, they like to do anything they damn well please, but anarchists aren't the be-all and end-all of libertarianism.
You can fight for free speech and oppose political correctness without subscribing to this flawed ideology. Libertarians have your back on that, as do many traditional conservatives, and some liberals like Jonathan Rauch, the Brookings Institution scholar, who literally wrote the book on the topic in 1995.
Being offended is part of how we learn. If you can't offend people, then you can't criticize people. And if you can't criticize people and ideas, then there is absolutely no way to figure out what ideas are good and what ideas are bad.
Yeah, I agree. 100%. You can oppose censorship as a conservative, a liberal. You could be just about anything but an SJW, a socialist, or a globalist. Any other ideology, I think, that you will oppose censorship. By the way, in my mind, at least a large portion of the alt-right is socialist, is it not? I mean, I'm just asking. I don't know for sure, but I do believe there is a component of the alt-right that makes it socialism. I mean, I don't believe that the alt-right actually believes in free speech if they are socialist. Those that are socialists that are within the alt-right. Just like I don't believe the traditional left-leaning socialists believe in free speech either. The reason I say that is because I don't think they value the rights of the individual enough to care about somebody else's free speech rights. Now, I could be wrong. Look, a libertarian already knows that you don't have to leave libertarianism to be against censorship. So there's no way in hell that issue is turning libertarians into alt-righters. If anything is turning them into alt-righters, I would think that it's libertarians who don't even understand the American Enlightenment and the republic founded by our beloved revolutionaries. Linos. Sir, as far as I can tell, this video that you've produced is more likely to turn away a libertarian from libertarianism than any other fact or issue you've raised. If this is how libertarians act and behave and treat other people, I don't want any part of them, sir. But I don't think that's how libertarians are. I think that's how you are and other linos are.
The alt-right's America First nationalism engenders a skepticism of foreign military intervention that's sorely lacking in Washington. And that's what's most compelling about the alt-right and the political realignment it's forced.
Citation, please. I mean, that is a bold claim. I don't think the alt-right, and again, I don't know a lot about it, but the alt-right, as far as I know, it wants an ethno-state, okay? So what do you think that's about, mainly? Foreign wars? I don't think so. I think it's about fear of losing one's culture. All right? That's caused by mass migration and traditions being tossed out the window willy-nilly. I don't think you know what you're talking about. So please, if I'm wrong, I'll admit it gladly. But can you marshal up any evidence that backs your claims? At most, I would say the alt-right is using that as a traditional wedge issue, to try to get people to their side. But really, that's not what they're about. Come on.
With former conservative hawks like Ann Coulter calling out Trump for troop surges in the Middle East. But even this anti-interventionism is soft ground, because if you delve into the mind of a figure like Steve Bannon, you'll uncover a nightmare vision of a world already engaged in global warfare.
We are in an outright war against jihadist Islamic fascism. And this war is I think, metastasizing.
I hear Bannon is a bad guy. Seems like Trump agrees with you. But then you lump the president with Bannon. They split ways, okay? You're all over the place. Honestly, this sort of topic bouncing and emotional narrative stuff and guilt by association and all of this crap, this is all Saul Alinsky type of argumentation and not in any way, shape, or form befitting an advocate of libertarianism as far as I'm concerned. This is just an absolute smear piece, and it's damned ugly.
And the alt-right's focus on nationalism and racial and ethnic identity doesn't bode well for a more peaceful future. The alt-right ultimately amounts to a backwards-looking movement.
So why didn't you make that the focus of your video, to make the case that libertarianism could not possibly be a pipeline to the alt-right? Instead, much of your argument has been to show how libertarians are the true defenders of Western culture and free speech. Dude! You do not want to establish the fact of a non-existent parallels. You want to make the case, or you should want to make the case, that the like of Richard Spencer leaving libertarianism to the alt-right is the exception that proves the rule. All right, come on. Know how to use rhetoric, all right? Instead of properly defending libertarianism, you've defamed many, many individuals for no good reason. You should want to show that no amount of folks that hold dear to libertarianism would move to the alt-right. That is the case you should be making, in my view. All right? Or, if it's true that there is that pipeline, and you're pretty sure of it, admit it. Admit it. And then distinguish between libertarianism and the alt-right, and that why you would never, and you advocate that nobody go to the alt-right, okay? Either say there is no such a pipeline, or say there is a pipeline, and this is why people should stop, not go to the alt-right, all right? You've done some of that, I think, in this video, but your rhetoric is so all over the place, I can't tell what you're arguing for. Heck, I can't even remember what I'm arguing against because you're so all over the place. All right? Calm down, Tom. You promised that you were going to be civil. And here you are just, I'm just infuriated by this. You guys, you're giving libertarianism a bad name. You're not acting like a libertarian. You're acting like an open border anarchist. That's not American libertarianism. Our founders didn't do that. Hey, they don't call it the United States of America for no reason. They formed a state. If libertarianism is a pipeline to the alt-right, just admit it and make the case against the alt-right philosophy. Don't make the case against nationalists. Don't make the case against populists. Don't make the case against conservatives. Don't make the case against any other group. Just make it against the alt-right. Focus on distinguishing libertarianism from alt-rightism. And then use only libertarian examples, solid libertarian examples, and solid alt-right examples. Don't defame anybody. All right? There's plenty of self-identified alt-righters. Use those folks, okay? I can't believe I'm explaining this to such a large and prominent libertarian outlet. You've bought into the globalist smear campaign against anybody that stands in the way of socialism and globalism. You've bought into their smear campaign, as if a smear campaign is based on truth. This is so bad. This is so bad. You honestly got me thinking that you guys have been bought by globalists, or there's something going on here, because so little of what you are doing here makes any sense to this American libertarian. You guys, you're freaking me out.
The alt-right ultimately amounts to a backwards-looking movement, and that's what's most concerning.
Yeah, backwards to Nazi Germany or Stalin's Soviet Union, but portraying President Trump, Tucker Carlson, Ann Coulter, Milo Yiannopoulos, Stephen Molyneux, Lord Southern as the alt-right, alt-light. I'm sorry, I don't see it. I don't see defenders of Western culture as the alt-right. I see them as defending against Nazism and communism. I'm sorry. I don't know where you're getting this stuff, okay? Look, if you want to have socialist identity politics, an ethno-state, then you're alt-right. The only thing debatable to me is like whether it's based in socialism or not. I'm not quite sure, but to me it seems like you cannot have an ethno-state unless you are adopting socialism, collectivism principles based on race. So I don't know how you can have an alt-right without that. So if somebody can explain to me how you could, please do so. I'd like to understand that a bit better. But man, the ethno-state has to be a part of it. If that's not a part of it, it's not alt-right, okay?
It's telling that their beloved slogan, "Make America Great Again," both harkens back to a mythical time that never existed.
Yeah, that is, like I say, that is rich from someone that harkens back to a mythical America founding that never happened. I mean, America was founded, but not the way you present it.
And was ripped off from Ronald Reagan.
Come on now, you are just straight up poisoning the well, okay? MAGA is not alt-right. I got news for you, buddy. A lot of non-whites wear MAGA hats. The fact that some alt-righters supported candidate Trump does not make Trump or his other supporters racist. We're talking half the voting population basically voted for him. There are not, half of the nation is not alt-right, you fool. Anyway, if we follow your line of thinking, the fact that Richard Spencer once supported libertarians would make all libertarians racist. All right? And not only that, libertarianism, that sounds a lot like the word liberty, sounds like you ripped that name off from somewhere. What in the hell is wrong with you, sir? This is so ridiculous. As much as I try to be level-headed and or that I'm trying to be on my channel, this is just pure foolishness from somebody, from an organization, not an individual trying to, exercise their right of free speech, but from an organization that has the time and the resources to get this shit right when it comes to what libertarianism should be about and what libertarians think and how they are opposed to the alt-right. You should have been able to get this right, okay?
The alt-right is about recapturing a non-existent past through vague but misleading appeals to Western values.
Said the libertarian that has a child's understanding of the American revolutionary history.
Libertarians are the true defenders of the Enlightenment and
This is worse than the appeal to authority fallacy, okay? This is an appeal to self-authority. I mean, that is the biggest logical fallacy. Sir, your reasoning is shite, and your rhetoric is not much better. The only good thing about your presentation, I would say, is the editing. It ain't bad, and I also like the musical score. But as for reason, bub, you are sorely lacking.
Present a forward-looking vision that centers on the power of individuals to create their own experiences, make their own choices, and foster a more peaceful world.
Sounds like to me you're promising utopia. That's never gone wrong, has it now? Look, I'm a libertarian, but you can't have peace, prosperity, and freedom perpetually. It's not possible, right? And you can't have these things even temporarily if someone is kicking down your door, stealing your stuff, dictating to you how you are going to live, and they have a bayonet pointed at your chest. So if you want to live free, you want to have some prosperity, you better be willing to defend it and fight for it if you have to, you ding-dong. Maybe it's libertarians like you with your Pollyanna view of the world that gives people a reason to tell libertarians to piss off. You ever think of that? What you suggest has zero relationship to reality and barely related to the principles that the founding fathers studied.
If that's not for you, stick with the alt-right or its spin-offs. Just know what you're signing up for.
Dude, you don't own libertarianism, and your idea of libertarianism is garbage. I've been fighting socialists for 30 years now, and you know what? If you're not a socialist plant actively working on destroying libertarianism, well, you are unwittingly doing their bidding. Your policies are as weak and pathetic as your arguments. So come at me. You're a big boy. I'm calling you out. You do not represent Western culture, nor do you follow the ideals of the American founders, and I'm here to make libertarianism great again. Come at me, bro.